Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am Estela Mata. I'm one of the co-founders of Looms for Lupus. And today we are here celebrating International Self-Care Day. And we have an amazing discussion for you. We have a very special guest, and she's going to be talking to us about self-care. So please put down your name and where you're tuning in from, because this is going to be an interactive conversation. Uh, Really quick disclaimer before we get started. The information provided today here by Looms for Lupus and or any of the panelists on this live symposium, it is provided for you for general information purposes. And even though one of our panelists may be, a health coach or professional advisor, please make sure that you do not substitute any of the information and or advice that we have here as professional medical advice. We ask that you please ask questions and we'll provide you with some information, but we do recommend that you seek medical advice from your professional physicians and refer to them for any questions you may have regarding any medical condition, about anything about your medical condition and or treatments. And if this is the first time that you are tuning in, Looms for Lupus is a nonprofit organization that provides support, awareness, advocacy, tools, and information for those living with overlapping conditions, as well as autoimmune conditions like lupus, fibromyalgia, and mental health. We provide these services for free. We want to empower you, and we want you to feel connected and not to feel alone. And right before I bring on our special guest, I will do a brief introduction to her. She is Lauren Freedman. So let me welcome her in, and then I will also bring on. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Hi, I'm so good. It's so great to see you, Estela.
Yeah, so I have your bio here. I could either read the bio or you can give a brief introduction of yourself. What would you prefer?
Go for it. I don't even know what you've got, but go for it.
So Lauren Freedman is the host and creator of UNINVISIBLE Pod. She's a patient advocate, a journalist, a consultant and chronic invisible illness and disability activist. Lauren Freedman is an award-winning entrepreneur, voice actor, writer, and an activist who lives here in Los Angeles. She has lived with depression and anxiety since she was a teen and was first diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease and sleep disorders in 2017. Harrowing experiences of medical gaslighting and disability paired with her work in women's health activism prompted her to seek community where none was available. It was then when she became aware that even her close friends were living with these invisible diagnoses, and she began speaking out and kindled her own community so nobody would have to feel lost in their body's immunities again. And one of the things that I have to say is we connected through our advocacy work. And it's just great and amazing to have someone with so much, lived experience to also not only talk about her lived experiences, but support others that are going through so much. And one of the things that, I admire of you is all the work that you have been doing. So her work is really centered in deepening narratives about chronic illness and disability. She raises awareness, inspiring inclusion, and cultivating community for those living the Spoonie life. In 2021, she completed training as a national certified health and wellness coach in order to further and serve her community. Lauren graduated from London's Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, RADA, with a BA in honors too, as well, in acting in 2008. And, one of the things, again, that I love, Lauren, that you share is that you keep learning and you keep sharing what you've learned with the community. And to me, that's so selfless. It speaks highly about all the work that you're doing and how you want to support others. So I could just go on and keep reading your amazing bio, but I want you to kind of talk to us about the UNINVISIBLE Pod and and how you kind of started with that and amplifying other patients' voices. And then we'll get into the amazing conversation that we're going to have around self-care and just knowing about self-care tips and tricks and everything else you have in your tooltip.
Well, thank you so much, Estela. It's always such a pleasure to be able to sit down and talk about the things that we're passionate about with fellow advocates, especially those of us who are in this space to really help people. And a lot of what we'll probably be talking about today will be about sorting through snake oil too, which is something that it's very easy to come across in the wellness space. And yeah, so I got started really with getting sick. I was in the middle of a career shift. I had trained as an actor and worked as an actor for many years. Some of you may have even seen me on an episode of Modern Family way back in the day. And I was really starting to lose interest in the performing profession for many reasons, mainly because it didn't feel sustainable enough to me. And because I decided I either had to help change the system or I had to put up with it, and I just couldn't. So I went into this big career shift, and while I was in the midst of that, I got really sick, started experiencing cognitive decline, brain fog, joint pain, and absolutely exhaustive fatigue, which I now know to call functional exhaustion when talking about it with a medical practitioner, because it's the only way to really get them to take you seriously when you say you're tired, especially if you're female. So I got to the stage where I couldn't really perform at work and couldn't show up at work, and I had to leave my job. And I ended up getting diagnosed with an autoimmune thyroid condition, with obstructive sleep apnea, later also with idiopathic hypersomnia, which is a fancy medical title for you're tired and we don't know why. Congratulations, good luck with your life. And consequently also found out that the root cause of a lot of what I was experiencing, what really triggered my genetic predisposition toward autoimmune disease, and what I'm dealing with right now, is mold illness and parasites. So when I talk about a root cause approach, it's going to be very different from what some of you may be used to hearing about, because for me, a root cause approach is actually looking at what caused even the autoimmune to be triggered. So I started reaching out online. I'd been writing in women's health and hygiene and period equity. And I literally went on Facebook and I said, help, this is what's going on. Does anyone have any thoughts, any solutions? And so many of the people I know started responding, especially women, saying, I've been through this health crisis. I've been through this thyroid health crisis. I've been through this thing, that thing. Oh, by the way, I have a genetic disorder I never told you about, even though we were roommates, things like that. So many things that so many of us were not sharing, even with our closest friends. And these were close friends, many of them who were sharing these things with me. And I was like, it's bad enough we're not talking about the shedding of our uterine lining, to put it mildly, right? It's bad enough we're not talking about bleeding every month. Why don't we also talk about the rest of this stuff if everyone else is having these experiences? And then I experienced medical gaslighting, which we can talk about if you want to. But I had an experience where a doctor told me I was just fine because of the numbers. And I said, I'm not fine based on my experience. And they wanted to refer me to a psychiatrist. And I was like, I'm already seeing one, thank you. And I thought, if this is the experience I'm having, what's the experience everyone else is having? Because I recognize how I move through the world. And I recognize the privileges and the disadvantages that I experience on both ends. So what are other people experiencing who are also sitting in this seat and dealing with these same practitioners and perhaps invisible biases that get played out when you are a patient dealing with a provider? And that got me, because I have this background in acting and voice, and I had equipment to record. I was like, I might as well hit record on these conversations that are pointing me in a direction and helping me find healing. And that was 4 years ago, actually 4.5 years ago. So I was very fortunate to win a WECO Health Award, which is now known as the Social Health Awards, in my first year of running the podcast. And I recently relaunched the podcast, and I'm about to release episode 151, which will be also the first subscriber only episode. So I'm switching to a subscription model because I've been creating free content for a really long time. So the time came to make an energetic shift in order to nourish myself a little bit more too. But in the last few years, I also discovered health coaching, found a health coach for myself, and trained as a health coach. Now I'm nationally board certified, as you mentioned. I'm also a certified international health coach. And I recently, literally in the last week, also certified as a nutrition coach. So always continuing to learn. I think it's a bit of an addiction when you are in this field and when you're learning things that can help people. And a huge part of the ways in which I do that is in helping patients and their caregivers, be that loved ones or otherwise, learn how to navigate what it's like living through these experiences, learn to normalize conversations around the breadth of our different experiences, learn to accept and love each other on a deeper level, and understand that curiosity, true curiosity, not when it's presented in a rude way, but in a kind way, is a form of compassion. And if we can all extend that kind of empathy to others, then it makes our world a little bit more loving, and we can become everyday activists in that way too.
Wow, Lauren, it's so amazing again to be able to hear how, your lived experience got you to where you're at, and how you continue to learn, and you're continuing to share all this. I'm glad that your platform is going to be more like a subscription based, because a lot of times there's just so much information out there. You want to be able to get reliable information from a reliable source. And with you doing this, I think it will just give us all peace of mind. Like, okay, you know what? This is worth it. Let me go ahead and subscribe to this, because I know that she knows what she is talking about. And it is so important to get your information from a credible source, because there is so much information out there that, some people will just post and put out there without really knowing how it's going to impact or affect whoever is reading it on the other end. So with that being said, you kind of mentioned a couple of things here, you becoming a health coach. So what is a health coach? And then also you also talked about, nutrition, and what do you mean by, like, now you acquired this new, title of a nutrition health coach, or all of these things? Like, decipher it for us, because sometimes there are so many terms out there that we don't understand what a functional health coach is versus a health coach, and all of these amazing words that we hear that we're like, wait, what does that mean?
I'm happy to be a walking dictionary for you, or a sitting one. So first of all, health coaches, we are agents of behavior change. What that means is that the role of a health coach is to work with individuals to find ways to create sustainable, long-term change in our behaviors and habits that will enable us to enact the advice of our medical providers. Often that looks like helping people find ways to get on top of testing, helping people find practitioners. Those are particular specialties that I certainly offer, is helping people research new practitioners and finding the right kind of people to work with them in terms of their needs and their ability to cover the cost, etc. It also means helping people find ways to practice self-care, which is why we're here today on International Self-Care Day, right? Which can look like a lot of different things, and can also be a really fraught experience in a very, very white colonized wellness space too. So being able to understand the oppressive systems that are at play and how those can create blockades for us in our pursuit of our best health and wellness, and how we can navigate those systems, and also what we take responsibility for and what we're able to let go of, which is a big part of self-care, I think, as well. And the biggest way that I tend to help patients or clients, I should say, is in finding the habits that are going to serve them long term, creating systems that will serve them and allow them to continue to invest in changed behaviors, whether that is a change in nutrition, a change in the way that they approach gentle movement every day, a change in their relationship to the world around them. It can take many forms. Now, navigating the actual care space means that we're dealing with 3 different kinds of approaches to medicine. We're dealing, or really 4, we're dealing with allopathic medicine, which is your traditional Western medical industrial complex, which we are all very familiar with at this point. One of my other specialties is in navigating insurance systems, navigating the experience of billing and getting through for appointments and referrals, which can be really confusing. And the other 3 kinds are alternative medicine, which is sort of a weird name. We hear alternative sort of thrown around a lot, and it's really anything that's not in the allopathic category. It's usually things like traditional Chinese medicine, for example, right, which includes acupuncture and cupping and things like that, moxibustion. But you're going to hear a lot about integrative and functional medicine as well. So these are the other 2 categories. And they're forms of medical care that I really lean on and believe in, and that many people who I work with who are working through finding what works best for them also gravitate toward. Integrative medicine is going to mean the marriage of allopathic treatments and so-called quote unquote alternative treatments. So you're finding a way to bring these 2 forms of care together and taking the tools that work for you. This is, in my experience and in the experience of many people that I work with, kind of the ideal approach, because you're open to trying new things, but you're also open to letting go of the things that are not working for you. Functional medicine is often deemed a root cause approach. And there's a slight issue with the way that it's often talked about, in that many functional practitioners will talk about a root cause approach, but what they will do is give you supplements. There is nothing wrong with supplements if there are things that are helping you, right? But supplements, like medication, this isn't always the case, but in many cases can actually act more like a Band-Aid rather than solving and healing what is at the real root of what's going on. So like a very good functional medicine practitioner is actually going to say, you know, there's something else going on here that we can't put our fingers on, and perhaps run more testing. That can often look like testing for SIBO and things going on in your digestive system, because we know about the gut-brain connection. It can look like testing for mold, heavy metals, environmental toxins, and indeed parasites. Parasite testing is the one category that's sort of the most difficult to test for, because often parasites don't really show up on tests. And so you even have to go sort of to the extremes of alternative to really find out about the parasite piece. I'm someone I read enough about it and knew enough about it to know that I was experiencing a few symptoms that made me go, I definitely am dealing with this. And sure enough, when I started treating them, they started coming out. So, looking at these things is really important, but also looking at your stress, your sleep, things like this that can also be huge triggers. We know that stress is one of the biggest triggers for any kind of autoimmune symptoms and any kind of genetic predisposition that we may have toward a diagnosis. So really looking at the whole person is part of these medical approaches. It's also a really big part of the health coach approach. And we work often in tandem with doctors and clinicians to provide the highest level of care to patients. And we know from numerous studies, and good ones, by the way, that the use of health coaches in tandem with these medical practitioners really increases patient outcome and helps patients find their footing in a system that's sort of designed for us to feel a little bit ill at ease, unfortunately. So that is the long and short of it.
Yeah, no, I love it, because not everyone has the opportunity to know or experience, what truly navigating or help in navigating the healthcare system. Because one thing, one approach could be, okay, I know the terms, I know how to get my referral, I know how to advocate for myself on this. But what you're talking about is a totally different approach, where you're guiding, where you're assisting, and not just empowering the individual to practice self advocacy, but also include self-care, and look at different ways to treat the different things that we deal with. Because when we're diagnosed with a condition, like for myself, I live with fibromyalgia. It doesn't just affect me, right? It affects my physical body, it affects my mental health, it affects my sleep, and all of this affects the way I eat, the way I interact with others. And guess what? The way I interact with others is the way I feel and the way I respond to them, right? So it affects your social life, it affects your immediate family, it affects everything. So it is so important to be able to grab all the resources and have a team of a health coach to be part of your care team to get the best healthcare outcomes that you deserve. And I think having an approach, a very holistic approach, I want to say, will help you with that. Because sometimes there is gaslighting, right? You may not feel heard by your provider, and maybe you need some assistance in looking for other providers. And I think that's where you would come in and kind of help with that, right? And then the other approaches that you were talking about, one of the things for me that has worked a lot is being exposed to learning about cupping and other ways that I can relieve my pain, like with acupuncture and all of that, which I was not always exposed to. I didn't know that I could utilize my Flex account to pay for my copays, or that even my insurance would cover acupuncture, because we are never taught these things. So I think it's so
because great. Why would we be?
Right.
It would limit the profitability of a very profitable system, right? So for a lot of the work I do is sort of going, how do we game the system so it works better for you?
Exactly. And a lot of times looking at all these options will help you, because with lupus or fibromyalgia, we're all different. We're all unique. So we have to find what works for us. And sometimes, one approach may not work. You might have to look or seek for multiple approaches. Like for me, the acupuncture, the cupping, and the deep tissue massage sometimes does help. For my daughter, she also has fibromyalgia. The acupuncture doesn't help as much, and she does not like the cupping. So we have to look at what's best for you, as well as with those living with lupus or other autoimmune conditions. The treatments that you're having or that your doctor is giving you, it's very unique to you. So you always have to also see how these other approaches or these other alternative ways of kind of relieving those other symptoms that you may be having, how it's going to interact with your treatments. Now, I do have someone here. She's
Victoria.
asking a question. Yeah, Victoria. She said, "Hi, I'm Victoria and I have lupus, but I cannot tell if I have side effects from the medication or if it's a flare. I stopped taking the medication due to the way it was making me feel." Now, the first thing, just alert that comes up to my brain is, oh no, you never want to stop taking your treatments or your medications before speaking to your provider. One, it may take a couple of times, a couple of weeks, for you to see the effects of a treatment. That's number one. Number two, always talk to your doctor about what you're feeling and how you can figure out if it's a flare or if it's extra, symptoms that may be secondary symptoms that you're getting from side effects from the treatment. So I would just, those are two of the things that just come up from reading this message. I don't know if you want to respond to this.
Yeah, thanks, Estela. Just to throw in there also, of course, anything we're talking about, we can't give medical advice. We're not medical professionals. I'm an allied health professional, right? So my job is not to diagnose or treat. It's just to support and guide. And what I would say is that I agree with Estela that, you really need to talk to your doctor about any kind of big decisions like stopping medications, especially because some medications can give us really bad withdrawal symptoms too. But I also think that you should trust your body. You're the one having the experience in your body, and nobody else knows it the way you do. So if you really believe that there's something in the medication that's causing an issue for you, that's worth bringing up with your doctor. If you find that you have a relationship with your doctor where it doesn't feel comfortable saying, I have some questions, then it might also be worth looking into finding another doctor who might be able to care for you better. And despite what many people think, we actually do have options in terms of the people that we choose to go to for our care. No matter what your health insurance looks like, you can always see a different practitioner. You may have different limitations, but know that there is someone out there for you and that there are solutions for you, and you should lead with your knowledge of your body, but also make sure that you are working with your care team as a team. Once you are dealing with a diagnosis, especially one that is autoimmune, you really want to be building a team that fully supports you and making sure that you're doing everything you can to bolster those relationships as you would hope they would do with you.
Yes, thank you for responding to it. And thank you for Victoria for asking and feeling comfortable enough to post this question here, because this is what it's about. It's about maybe you had not heard about that you have other options that you could, talk to your provider about this. Maybe you don't feel comfortable talking about this with your provider. And that's where the self-empowerment and self-advocacy comes in. And I love the way you phrased it, Lauren, because you have to trust your body. You know your body best. And that's one of the things that saved my sister's life. She knew there was something wrong with her. She refused to leave, and she kept insisting and persisting to the doctor, please, I know there is something wrong with me. Even though the doctor said, you're fine, go home, we'll call you in the morning.
Imagine if she'd done that.
If she would have gone home, she would have died. And so that's one of the things that I love from your answer, Lauren, is the fact that you have to trust your gut instinct. You know your body the best, and you have to feel comfortable enough with discussing this with your provider. And if you do not, then you have the right to choose another doctor and or look for another provider. So thank you for your question, Victoria, and for sharing that with us. So
it's really brave, by the way. I just want to acknowledge that being able to talk about this stuff in a public forum like this, it takes chutzpah. And I really understand what it takes to, and where we have to be at, right, in order to be able to ask these questions of people we don't know. And so I really want to congratulate you, Victoria, on being comfortable enough to reach out. Please know, for anyone tuning into this, that if you don't feel comfortable enough asking questions of any of your providers, then you might want to think about looking at those relationships. I'm not saying leave your doctors at all. I would never advise that, right? But you definitely want to optimize your experience in the medical system. And there are ways to do that, even though it feels like we don't necessarily have the power to do it. And for me, this is the biggest part of self-care, is learning how to advocate for ourselves, to speak up for the things that we need. It was a very big learning curve for me, and it took a lot of support from my support system. And I encourage all of you to find ways to connect to support systems, whether it's through a group like Looms for Lupus, which is such a wonderful community organization, or whether it's through your loved ones, through friends, what have you. We know from numerous studies that the more connected we are to community, the better impact it will have on our longevity, which means that our health markers are going to improve when we have support. So please do, get in touch with the people that you need to support you, and know that there are ways to navigate this. And I'm here to help. We're all here to help today.
Exactly. Yes. So thank you for being brave. Another thing that, we've been talking about is self-advocacy, and how important it is for you to advocate for yourself, to look up, these terms. If you're not feeling comfortable, if you don't have that relationship with your provider, to seek, other resources and other ways to maybe empower yourself to communicate with your provider. So it's so important. But also, Lauren, I know that there are so many tools out there that people can utilize. What, as a nutritionist or as a health coach, what would you recommend that someone do if they're trying to figure out how to navigate their overall health? And I'm talking about also your mind, relieving the stress. Like, what can we do to help ourselves outside of the medical providers, for our things that we can do on our own?
Yeah, obviously, thank you for that question, Estela. Self-advocacy is a really big part of that. And for me, it feeds into your mental health and wellness, your stress, and finances, certainly. We often initially evaluate clients and get them to really self-evaluate and see where they feel that they are. I will, after I talk about this, find a link and send an interactive one that people can take a look at in the chat. But what it does is that it allows you to look at several different spokes on a wheel, several different aspects of your life. These include your finances and your relationship to those, your career, your relationships, intimate and otherwise, your mental health, your physical health, your spirituality even, as well as your nutrition and your relationship to movement. And these are all factors that are going to play into how confident you feel in your ability to manage your own wellness on a day-to-day basis. And the goal is to see where you're at and to try to bring the numbers up, right? We want to just always be bringing the numbers up and make sure that we're addressing everything. If you're living with a chronic condition, one of the things that has come up on my podcast hundreds of times, and that comes up with every single client that I have ever had, is the importance of pursuing mental health support, especially because chronic literally means that this doesn't go away. And it means that sometimes symptoms are unpredictable, and sometimes we need to find new ways to support ourselves and to nurture ourselves. And so making sure that you have mental health support, whether or not it's been recommended by any of your other medical professionals, it often isn't. Asking for those referrals and making sure that you find a therapist who you can work with is, I think, really key, as well as the community piece that I mentioned before. And then in terms of navigating the advocacy piece, which can be a stressor both financially and metaphysically, if you will, finding ways that work for you to navigate your insurance, how you're going to pay your bills, how you're going to make your appointments, creating these systems for yourself so that they feel supportive in the longer term. Really important to look at that. I mentioned community as well. Of course, that includes your relationships and really looking at all these different aspects of your life. Now, we also probably want to talk about a number of the different kinds of treatment options and integrative wellness tools that you can start to add to your tool belt here. Nutrition's a really big piece. What we put in our bodies is expressed on the outside as well. So when we're eating things that don't agree with our bodies may react. And so looking into what you're eating on a day-to-day basis. And the way I approach this is from the point of view of being eating disorder sensitive as well, because a lot of us, especially women, have a pretty fraught relationship with what diet should look like and exercise should look like, right? So what are things that we can do that feel good? And that feel nourishing to us? Does it feel more nourishing when I eat a plate of vegetables that I have roasted and cooked off for myself? Or does it feel more nourishing to eat out? Like, what works better for me in these circumstances? Does it feel better in my body when I'm eating vegetarian or vegan than it does when I'm eating meat? These are great questions to be asking yourself as you're doing your grocery shopping. One of the big things that came up in a recent talk that Estela and I did together as well is this thing about the grocery store. My advice when you are navigating the grocery store is to skip the middle. Just get all together, unless you need allergen-friendly crackers and rice and dry goods. Things like canned beans and pastas, they're going to be in the middle. But Everything you want to source at the grocery store, for the most part, the things that you're going to want to be consuming are on the outside. It's all of your whole foods, your meat, your vegetables, your fruits, organic if you can make that happen for sure. And just being able to get the things on the outside and focus on that might help you move through what can sometimes be a stressful place with a little more ease, I hope. Also, looking into some of these quote unquote alternative practices like acupuncture, cupping, meditation is a really big one. And I think we tend to make meditation seem like a really big thing that we need to learn how to do. Sometimes just checking in with ourselves and taking a few deep breaths that's meditation. And often it's about quieting the mind, but sometimes the mind is too busy to even quiet it, and that's okay. The big goal with meditation is just to accept the experience that we're moving through without judgment. So whether it is finding a meditation program that works for you or not, there are plenty of ways to go about it. The movement piece as well. I tend to defer to Yoga with Adrienne, for those of you who know her, who says, find what feels good. And I think especially when we're dealing with chronic conditions and certain kinds of intense movement can trigger flares, we want to make sure that we're being gentle with our bodies. We may be at certain points in the journey where any kind of movement beyond our daily activities feels too much. That's okay. So a lot of it is about saying, I'm okay right now, and this is okay. If this is the best I can do today, then that's enough. I always recommend looking into, I know I mentioned acupuncture, cupping, but to traditional Chinese medicine as a whole, herbalism, if that might also support you, Ayurveda, if it supports you. A lot of what actually is part of the integrative approach comes from indigenous medicine. So understanding that not only are these traditional forms of medicine that have been passed down from generations, but also that these are forms of medicine that belong to certain cultures, showing respect for those cultures in our use of or understanding of these traditions, and not sort of co-opting them while we're in the process of consuming them, but showing them the respect that they deserve. And a lot of us who go through autoimmune conditions might be working through trauma and things. These are things to work through certainly with a therapist, but sometimes with someone who's specialized in dealing with trauma, who may practice something like EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization therapy, or spotting, which can be very similar. So finding a practitioner who's really going to serve you in every way. And it involves research. It means we have to do more work, even though we're tired. But having support to do that is exactly why I'm here. I like to think of the metaphor of a sidecar on a motorcycle. I'm in the sidecar. You have the map and the keys. You are taking us on this journey. I am here to cheer you on, and I'm here as a guide on the side. Whatever you may need that comes up, I'm your community to support you beyond the community you probably already have. And looking into that, and also questioning. We hear a lot about, like, I need to do my own research. If you're going to do your own research, you also need to know what credible research looks like. And a big part of that is about looking at who funded the research, and making sure that whoever funded the research didn't also perhaps serve to profit from it and perhaps skew results, which we have known to happen. And also, and one of the best resources I would say for that as well is PubMed. It's all medical publishing journals, which can be very reliable as sources of information. There may be modalities that you want to look into that aren't necessarily evidence-based. That's okay. The modalities that I'm going to recommend or practice are always going to be evidence-based on some level, including the methodologies that I use within coaching, like motivational interviewing and things like that, but nonviolent communication. But just really important to know when we're doing our own research that we're not getting information from blogs and instead getting it from published medical journals. And then another big thing that I think it's important to look at is environmental toxins. we're talking about what we're putting in our bodies, what are we putting on our bodies? What's in our environments? What are the relationships like in our environment? Are they serving us? Do they feel good to be in? I'm not advocating to leave relationships either, right? Like these are all very personal choices, and we are all bio-individual in our experience of the world. But there's actually been a book that came out recently by Darren O'Lean called Fatal Conveniences that's worth picking up a copy of. And I will be designing a course around similar topics, so you can look forward to that in the future. But it really talks about ingredients that we might find in products that we use day to day. The average woman uses something like 12 to 13 products on her face and body before she leaves the house in the morning. So what's in those products? Are there endocrine disrupting chemicals and carcinogens? You bet you there are in a lot of products that we see in some of our self-care aisles, right? So trying to make the more natural choices. This is where I defer to Estela's sister, Juana, who is amazing at creating her own homemade skincare that really works and using ingredients that she knows the names of. If you look at the ingredients on a package and you don't understand what the words mean, it's probably not worth using, right? Same with anything you're going to put in your body too, any packaged product. I would advocate for moving away from packaged products as a whole and moving toward whole food sources. The closer it is to the ground, the healthier it's going to be to you. And most of the medications we have that are super effective come from nature at their very base. So if we are looking for healing from natural sources, that's probably going to serve us and be more bioavailable to us as well as beings in this environment. But thinking about your air quality if you live in a city, and thinking about, could there be mold exposure that's happening because of wet drywall in your home? Is that worth looking into? Have you traveled anywhere where you could have been exposed to parasites that could have invaded your gut? Are there underlying infections that we're dealing with that haven't been addressed or haven't been tested for, like mono, also known as EBV, or Lyme? And of course, a lot of Lyme testing isn't at the level that we need it to be, but we're hoping that will change in the future. But a lot of these things are worth looking into. And I think doing the things that you can to control what you can control is what puts you back in the driver's seat and returns you to a sense of agency, which for me is the greatest outcome that I could hope for anyone that I work with, that you walk away from the work we do together feeling empowered and feeling like you know where you're going and you know how to get there. And a lot of that is just making choices with a little more awareness and education.
And with that awareness and education, I think is what we're getting a lot of. You're bringing up a lot of things that maybe a lot of people are not aware of, like all these environmental factors, all these extra ingredients that we're putting on our bodies that we don't even think about twice. We just, we know that this is the trend and we go buy it and we just think it's good for us because our neighbor's using it and she said it worked for her, right? And we don't know how our bodies are going to react to it, or what it can do or how it can contribute to a new stressors and or factors in our bodies. You're so right when you're talking about, again, awareness. Now, when I go into the grocery store, I will think about what you made me aware of. You kind of want to go through the outer aisles versus the center of the aisles. And I don't do a lot of the grocery shopping, but I told Lauren that when I go, I'm going to make sure that I go around. And really, when you're looking at a grocery store, the way they're set, what do you find? You find like all the dairy products, the refrigerated products, and or the produce, right? All the healthy stuff, all the produce on one side. And, as a kid, I do remember going and help my mom bag things. And I'm thinking, you know what, that is so good for us to kind of go back to the roots and to knowing like what is really good for you. And I know earlier too, you mentioned about like, if it's closer to the earth, right, it's better for you. Also back in the day, my dad used to grow produce at home because one, it was more economical for us to do that because one, we're 7 kids, 7 siblings. My dad, raised 7 of us, plus we took in my aunt and my cousin. So there were 9 kids plus my parents. And then of course he also helped other other people with jobs, and they would come, and my mom would host them all the time and would be cooking for them. So my dad, and I look back, and when you said that, it just took me back. He instilled a lot of that in us. You growing your own produce, what's coming out, what you're putting in it. And we always, anything that he would grow, we would share with our neighbors. So not only is it helping you, but it's also you're helping others at the same time. So that's one thing. And my sister does actually do her creams, and she goes on plant-based diets. She wants to know how it's affecting her. So she'll stop, eliminating a couple of things and incorporating them in again to see how she feels. And I use her as an example because I'm not as, I want to say, what's the word I'm looking for? Structured.
She's very good at the structure. Juana is so good at saying, I want to really try something and committing to it for a period of time. And that's such a huge strength, because it's really hard to adopt these changes. So she sort of has a leg up in that sense, but she's also trained as a social worker. And I think that's a huge part of it.
Exactly. So I think the fact that you're making us aware about all these things plays such a huge role on also the way we're going to act, because now I guarantee you, if whoever's listening to this, now they're going to be looking at what they're going to put in their bodies. Like, have they visited anywhere that could have exposed them to these parasites? Like, does that even exist? Well, and if it's real, and, all of this stuff that you hear about that you may be skeptical about, that, just this awareness will actually trigger that curiosity to find out what's on this product. Why am I getting this reaction?
And I don't want to alarm anyone either.
No.
There are ways to go into this piecemeal and to sort of look at things one by one. And that's where having help to do it can be really great. But please don't be alarmed hearing this stuff either. It's just about growing our awareness and going, okay, what if I just started with my household cleaning products, which, like, by the way, most of them are the most toxic thing in the world. And guess what? You can do it cheaper and cleaner by cleaning most things with white vinegar and lemon, so being able
things,
to,
right? The simple things.
It's so simple, but like, we have been turned into consumers in this like late stage capitalist patriarchy, that wants us to buy. And every time we buy, we're supporting these large corporations who are sending their CEOs home with millions and millions of dollars. I mean, what if we put our dollars into our garden? What if we put our dollars into our peace of mind? It'll cost you less to buy a bottle of white vinegar than it will to buy a bottle of Windex. So what if? That's all I'm saying.
Yes. And then the other thing, Lauren, that I was thinking about when you were talking about just being the support system and you being kind of like a co-pilot, right? We all need that co-pilot there to guide us, to give us instructions, to give us directions when we feel lost, to remind us of where to go, right? What do we do when we're navigating to a place where we've never been before, right? We put our navigation system, we're waiting for instructions of like, turn right, turn left. We want to look to see what's going to be, how long is it going to take for me to get to this destination? Are there better ways to navigate? So I see you, Lauren, as someone like a co-pilot, someone that will help guide us and direct us to the right path. And sometimes the paths that we take may not be what's going to be working for us, but you giving us the option of, you could also reroute to this other side if you have all these bumps on the road and there's construction, who knows, all these warning signs, like, guide us to a different route and reroute us to what's going to be best for us. And I think that's how I see a health coach, a functional medicine health coach, a nutritionist, and how I see you with your UNINVISIBLE coaching and all the different styles that you were talking about, and all the different awareness and the different tools that we can utilize as patients, as caregivers, not only to empower ourselves, to advocate for ourselves, build these trustworthy relationships with our providers, and whether it's the medical providers or the other providers with, that we're seeking care of. I think it's just so important. So, just everything that you've given us, all these nuggets of wealth of information. I think could be overwhelming, but I also hope that it doesn't scare people. I hope that people are aware that there is someone here to help you navigate, and you don't have to do this alone. Right. And how do people get a hold of you if they do need someone to help them navigate their, their conditions or their loved ones' conditions, or if they're seeking other alternative ways of maybe, using mindfulness techniques to relieve their stress, or perhaps looking or seeking for a nutritionist or, acupuncturist, or whatever other methods are out there?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I was actually just reminding myself that I need to send you all an interactive circle of life, which I will do very shortly. But in the meantime, the way you can find me is through my website. So the website for coaching is uninvisiblecoaching.com. I'll type it into
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. The chat, so everyone has that there. You can also find my podcast at uninvisiblepod.com, or anywhere that you stream audio. And there's a link to the coaching on that website as well. But really, I would check out uninvisiblecoaching.com. You can also find me on social media. I'm most active on Instagram at uninvisiblepod, but I am working on building the socials for the coaching as well. And I offer lots of different like payment plans and structured programs and things like that. And I'm working on 3 different group programs right now that I hope will be coming out toward the end of the year or early next year. So there's a lot in the works, and I really just want to be able to support everyone in the best way, in the way that feels best for them. It's funny, as you were talking about the co-pilot thing, I was like, oh, like I'm Elliot and everyone is ET. It's a little bit like, because it's hard to feel at home in our bodies when our bodies start messing around on us. And sometimes we're looking for homeostasis. We're looking for what the new normal is going to be. And my job is to help you advocate for yourself and get there. And I think that's kind of what Elliot does. Yeah. So for those of us who are like 80s babies and understand that reference,
right.
But really, it's such beautiful work to do, and to be able to help other people is, I didn't have the support when I first got sick. I had incredible support from my family, and that was very lucky. And I'm so fortunate that I had that. And I want to be able to provide that same support to the people that I work with, especially if you're finding that you're like struggling to find community, or even find the community groups that represent you and represent the conditions that you're going through. Who else is living through it? So I can talk to them about their lived experience and see how they navigated it. I'm interacting with a lot of these groups too. So being able to point people in the right direction for those resources is really important to me as well. And being able to give back when we go through our own health struggles. I think it's why you and I do what we do, and why it means so much to us. We have a personal stake in everyone else's success. And I really want to be able to support everyone in finding their way back to home. So whatever that looks like for you, reach out and let's see if we can work together. Yeah. And I also offer a free consult. So if you want to like talk, I offer a half an hour free. We can talk and see if we'd be a good fit as well.
And that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, you are an allied professional, so you will be helping and they're navigating their care. And I think that's so important, because you need to have that support. You need to be able to have someone that can help you and not feeling alone. But also, when we are diagnosed with a condition, especially a chronic condition, that sometimes obviously we lose a part of ourselves. We lose who we were, and we have to go through these different, grieving, through the grieving process. And I think to have someone kind of guide you back and guide you through this process would be really, really beneficial to many. And again, I wish I could do it I'm not an allied professional. I can help you. I can reroute you, but I could give you the support to take you to people like Lauren that will be able to help you and work with your providers, because the best thing that you can do is find someone that will support you, the right fit for you, that will also help you not just build trust within your community, but also with all your care team. So I think it's so important. And I love the fact that you give that 30-minute free session for people to kind of, test the waters. Not everyone's going to be the right fit for everyone. So it's good that you offer that. And I really appreciate just everything that you've given to our communities, because it's not just like only the fibromyalgia community, or only the lupus or autoimmune community, or only a specific community. It's for everyone, because we could all, whether we are healthy or diagnosed with a condition, we can use the help navigating our healthcare, because it is overwhelming. And not only that, we have to practice self-care, right? So we have to look for the people that are going to help us feel the best. And if we don't have an answer, we can seek help from others like Lauren, that if she doesn't have the answer, I'm sure she will get it for you and help you.
And I'm one of those allied health professionals who's willing to admit when I don't know the answer too. A lot of the issues that we come across in the medical system are about ego being in the room, and being able to remove our relationship to ego. And, I don't take it personally if you don't want to work with me too. If I'm not your style, then you need to find someone who is. But when we reach the limit of our capacity to help, what's the best thing we can do? Is it just to say, sorry, that's it? Or is it to say, you know what, let me ask someone else, or let me refer you to someone else who might be a better fit, or who might have more expertise in this area? So a lot of what I do is also referral in that direction as well. And yeah, we just want to be able to help. And I wish that I had had someone to kind of help me connect the dots when I was going through stuff early on. And if I can offer that to anyone, and if I can help you walk away with, at the very least, feeling like you have a sense of self again, or you have a sense of agency, then my job is mostly done. Once we become empowered and we know where to look for the right kind of information, and we have systems that support us and know how to do evidence-based research and how to look for practitioners who are going to serve us in the ways that we need, then we can handle this. It's about expanding our capacity through deeper understanding and education, and really becoming better citizens because of it, because then we can tell other people how to do it.
Right. So self-awareness, self-advocacy, they're all part of self-care.
Yeah.
It is so important, because a lot of people just think self-care, it's about meditation, mindfulness. It is more than that. It is you putting yourself as your number one priority. It is seeking the help that you need. It is getting allied professionals and your medical professionals working together for you, because you should always be number one. And I told you guys we were going to have an amazing session, and we were going to talk about self-care and beyond, because a lot of people don't associate all these self-empowerment tools and all of this self-advocacy tools part as self-care. And, it is so important to highlight everything, being aware, being able to speak up, being able to advocate for yourself, and being able to say, you know what, it's okay for me to not be okay, to look for help, and to advocate for the best healthcare, and to get the best healthcare outcome for yourself. So
Yes.
Thank you again, Lauren. So Lauren put all her sites there. So please reach out. If you have any other questions, please post them. This is live right now on Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube, but we will share this on Instagram as well. And if you miss the recording, you can watch it at any time, because it is going to be there for you. So excited to have you again, Lauren. Thank you for all your help and your awareness, and for helping us have, more aware, the power of awareness, be more aware to, be able to seek help and help each other out. Like you have
And
helped
it's,
so
yeah,
many.
and it's harder to get taken advantage of when we know better. So being able to empower ourselves with knowledge, with information, and I think our best tool is to educate ourselves as patients. So I hope that I'm able to support you in that journey, and I hope that if you take anything away from this conversation today, it's that you're in the driver's seat.
And you have a co-pilot waiting to help you navigate your way to the best self-care and the best healthcare outcomes that you deserve. So thank you again. Hope
Thank
you
you
guys
so
have a
much.
wonderful rest of your evening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.